Hi, Matt from Swiftic Software here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, one of the questions I get a lot is about Atlassian Connect. So when you're building a Jira Cloud app with Atlassian Connect, then you have to run that app somewhere. And in my Udemy course for Atlassian Cloud app development with Connect, I show you a way of running that app in AWS. So the question I've had quite a lot since is, isn't there an easier way of running apps? And well, actually, there is, because the easiest way to run a Connect app is probably by using a PaaS, platform as a service solution, such as Heroku. And that's what we're going to do today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Heroku. The first thing you need to do is you need to create an account. So sign up, create an account, and follow all the initial setup instructions, including installing the Heroku command line interface, etc. And you know how that's done depends on your particular platform. If you're on a Mac or Ubuntu Linux machine like me here, or if you're on a Windows PC. Now, I've done all of that. I've signed up. I've installed the command line interface, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an app in Heroku. And I'm going to call it Jira-Mat because I know that name is available. And I'm going to create that app. Now, the other thing you will know is that all Jira apps, even if they don't do anything special, they will need a database. Because when a Jira Cloud instance registers with your app, there's information that your app has to store in a database, persistently store in a database. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a Postgres instance to my app. So my app Jira-Mat, I'm now adding a Postgres resource. And as you can see here, I'm using the hobby dev level at the moment, which is free. And my app is also free. So far, I've incurred no costs whatsoever. And in a minute, I'm going to be running my app on this without incurring any costs. Now, the thing to be mindful of is that's great for development. That's great when you're just testing things out. But, obviously, if you start getting customers with your app, if you put it on the marketplace and you start getting customers, you're going to have to upgrade your dynos, as they call them, which is the compute infrastructure behind it. And you have to upgrade your Postgres instance because all the limitations you have with the free tier, they're not going to be good enough for you. But anyway, at this point, I haven't even registered a credit card in this account. How great is that? So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to use Atlassian Connect Express to create a Hello World style Jira app. So I'm just going to say Atlas Connect new, and let's call it my Jira app. And it's for Jira. So it's now generated some sample code here. Now, if I go in there, there's one file I would like to show you that Atlassian Connect Express generates for you, which is config.json. Because when we're working with Atlassian Connect Express and we're running the app locally, it runs in the development environment using an SQLite in-memory database, and that's basically how it works when you're going through the development cycle. Now, there's something else in here. If you go a bit further down, you can see that a production environment has already been configured. And that production environment is actually configured to for PaaS systems like Heroku. So you can inject the port number, Heroku can inject the port number, Heroku can inject the database URL down here. That's already been pre-configured for you. There's a few things though. So first of all, the first thing we need to do is we called it Jira-Mat, so we need to change the name of this. So it's Jira-Mat. So that's one thing we need to change. And there's also another thing, because one of the classic challenges people get with Heroku is around the versions of Node and the versions of NPM. Because Heroku is, as I said, is platform as a service. So what we'll do is you're not setting up infrastructure. What it does is it can natively run your Node application for you. So all we do is we deploy our Node code, Node.js code, up onto Heroku, and Heroku will build it and run it for us. Now, one of the big challenges I often see is the versions of Node and the versions of NPM. But what we can do is in package.json, we can actually configure the versions. So there is a setting called engines. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a version of Node. I'm going to put that in here in a minute. We're going to have end of line. There we go. And we're going to have the version of NPM as well. So I know that well, actually, maybe I should just show you. So if I say node minus v, so it's node 16.15.1, and npm minus v, it's npm 7.21.1. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure those exact versions in package.json. Now, there is, there's something to be said about not using exact versions, because you want security updates to be deployed automatically. So what a lot of people do is, rather than using 16 or 15 or 1, they actually use 16.x. And then it will choose whatever 16 version is the latest. But what I'm going to do is, just to be safe, to start with, I'm going to use these exact versions. And then I know that those are the exact versions that are being used. The same versions I'm using locally are the versions that's going to be used by Heroku. So that's the next thing to do. And then, we spoke about Postgres. I also need to do an npm install pg. So I need to install Postgres. Because otherwise it won't be able to, without the pg module, it won't be able to communicate with your Postgres database. Now, all of those things are really good so far, and so far it's really simple. The next thing we want to do is we want to go to Heroku, and actually before I do that, I'll just do a final npm install to make sure that all the dependencies have been fetched. Yes, they have. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go to Heroku, and we're going to follow the deploy instructions. And the approach I'm going to use here is the Git approach. And when you use the Git approach, what you're doing is you initialize an empty Git repository in your app directory, and then you make the connection with your app, the Jira Mat app on Heroku, and we'll use the Heroku command line for that. And for that, you have to be logged in with the Heroku command line. If you haven't done so already, you have to say Heroku login. I've already done that, so we're good on that front. So I'm going to just copy that one, because that's the one I'm going to need in a minute. So I'm going to say git init here. And then I'm going to add my files. And as you can see now, all my code here in green has now been staged for commit. So, and I'm going to call it the initial commit. And then I'm going to run that Heroku command line command. What this does is, so I'll just run it and I'll show you what's done. What this does is it installs the remote for Git to push to. Now there is a new remote called Heroku, and now with Git I can push to that remote, and what it will do is it will push my code up to my Heroku environment. So I now say git push Heroku master, and that will push the code up. Now, there's a funny thing here though, because all of this will work, but in a minute our app won't work yet. And that is because of something else. Because in Heroku, the communication between the app and the database instance is via secure socket layer, SSL. However, Node doesn't recognize the certificate that Heroku uses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure Heroku such that it will ignore the certificate, and we'll do that in a minute. But I just wanted to show you what happens when you don't do that. We'll just wait for this to finish now. It's nearly there, and once it's finished, then I can show you what happens we're nearly there. And in Heroku, I'll get ready for that, because there's this lovely button that allows you to just open the app that you've just deployed. And yeah, that's finished deploying. So we'll just say open app. And this is the first time we're accessing the app, so this will take a little while. And there it is. So it's worked so far. But if I now go into Jira, into my Jira test instance here, and I try to install this, I'm going to use this URL here. If I now try to install this app in my Jira test instance, we're going to get an error. And it's a return to 500 code. Now the thing is, to see the log files, we just say Heroku logs. And in there, we will see, and there it is. It's a sequelized connection error, and it basically says it tried to use no encryption, and that wouldn't work at all. Now, what we wanted to do is we wanted to use encryption, but we wanted to ignore the certificate. So basically, if Node doesn't recognize the SSL certificate, then we wanted to carry on still. So what we can do is, there's two options of dealing with this. We can either create an SSL configuration object in config.json. So we can go into config.json, and we'll go down here, and there we put something along the lines of dialect options, and then in there we say the SSL configuration, and then we say which is reject unauthorized. Reject, I had to think there for a second. Reject unauthorized, false. So this is one way of doing it. And then close that bracket as well. There we go. That's one way of doing it. And I can show you as well. Git status, git commit, added dialect options, git add dot, forgot to add it now, and then git push Heroku master. So there's one way of doing it. There's also another way of doing it, and that is using a Heroku configuration. So where we then configure Heroku in this particular instance to basically not verify the certificate, and that option is, let's put it here. It's basically, the command is Heroku config set Postgres SSL mode equals no verify. That's all it is. That's the other way of doing it. Now, it really depends on which you prefer. This is something you have to do every time you set up a new app. You then have to remember to do that. If you put it into your config.json, that means that it's configured in your app. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. My choice is usually to use the dialog options approach. Right, I'm just waiting for this to deploy. And I'm also hoping I haven't made any mistakes in config.json, but only time will tell. So what we'll do here is I'll just do a refresh of this to confirm that that is still working. And what we're now going to do is we're going to install it in our Jira instance again. And just to show you up here, I don't have a Hello World app at the moment. And hopefully when we do this in a second, we will have a Hello World app. So it's just finishing the install. Come on, dear Jira, wake up. And there it is. So it has installed this Hello World app. And now up here you can see Hello World is now running, and it's running. There's the Hello World screen, and it's running from Heroku. And there you have it, the simplest way of running a Jira Connect app using Heroku.